It's a Slice of Life R on 938 Live, your dose of do-it-yourself motivation, and I'm Eugene Lowe. Today I speak with Michael Griffin, who has been involved with music education for more than 25 years in Australia, England and Dubai, and regularly visits schools in other countries, doing his best to inspire students and staff to learn smarter. And he shared with me the importance of becoming an expert, why some people become experts and others don't, and some strategies for maximizing learning. Michael, in a world obsessed with multitasking and multi-skilling, you propose that specialization, focus, and developing expertise in one area is rather important as well. Why do you think becoming an expert is so crucial?
Well, Eugene, there's 2 points to that. Firstly, if you do want to become an expert at anything, it takes a serious commitment of time. The second point is it's about making progress. Children in particular love to distinguish themselves by getting good at their hobbies and at academic pursuits and at musical pursuits. It gives people great joy to make progress. Indeed, making progress, according to one researcher in the field of motivation, and I'm thinking of a lady called Teresa Amable from Harvard University. She says that making progress is the great motivator in life and that we get a thrill by achieving. So if we take achieving and making progress, the end point of that is to distinguish oneself with a degree of expertise.
So obviously it goes beyond just accumulation of knowledge and information and even skill. You touched on the aspects of joy, which goes into emotional and personal fulfillment as well.
It does. And some of your listeners might be familiar with a concept we call flow, which was coined by a Hungarian-American psychologist, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And what he says is when we make progress and get better at what we do, we sometimes engage in a state of being where our whole attention is focused on that pursuit. For example, it might be focused on my playing the piano, which is one of my hobbies, and a bit more than a hobby, I suppose. But the point is that when we really focus on what we do, we sometimes get into this flow state, which is very enjoyable, and we emerge from that better at what we do.
It's when the world falls apart, time stands still, right? I mean, gamers will tell you when they're playing computer games, that's what happens to them as well. They get into the state where it seems like they don't even have to stop.
It's very interesting you mentioned gaming, Eugene, because games are designed deliberately on those very principles of flow. And the principle of flow is that whatever the challenge is, it absorbs all of my skills. So I'm so focused in what I do. Now, the thing about flow is if what you're doing is too simple, you don't make any progress. It's too easy. One gets bored. If it's too far out of reach, you also don't make progress. For example, if I'm playing a game of tennis against Roger Federer, it's too easy for him because he's so much better than I am, and it's too hard for me. Neither of us are making any real progress, and hence we're not enjoying it, and we're not experiencing this condition of flow. Flow occurs when your antagonist, or your opponent in this case, is as good, maybe a little bit better than you are, and you really have to focus hard. And these are the intensely enjoyable experiences, and they're also the experiences that make progress and lead to expertise.
So I'm getting two main arguments from you here, Michael. First of all, that becoming an expert makes us happy. It gives us joy, it gives us fulfillment, in addition to the sense of achievement and, of course, the success in that particular area that you're trying to become an expert in. And the other one is this aspect of flow, where whatever area you choose to become an expert in, it should be something that is challenging for you in stages, I suppose, but also something that is achievable by you.
Yes, it does need to be achievable. Let's go back to the first point about making one happy. There is a qualification there, and that is that
there is stress involved.
I think one needs to be passionate about it oneself, and that comes into one of the conditions for intrinsic motivation, and that's the motivation that people find within themselves to want to work hard. Now, if the motivation comes from, say, mum and dad, or something externally, the child might not want to do it, not want to work that hard. So it may not make them happy, that pursuit. It's got to be something that we want to do. And when we love what we want to do, and we enjoy the progress we make in that area, in that activity, then that's where the happiness kicks in.
Right.
And flow is an optimum enjoyment of an activity.
So, Michael, why do some people, though, become experts and others don't?
Well, this is a good question. You look, for example, in the field that I'm in, which is making music.
Yes, because obviously people work very hard at becoming experts.
Well, they do. And when you look at the historical reasons for expertise, and again, particularly in music, one of the big ones is a lot of the world thinks it's about how you're born, that there's some genetic lottery and some of us win it and some of us don't, and you may be born with music genes or genes in a particular area.
Or just wide palms or big long fingers or something. I've heard that before.
That perhaps is genetic. Okay. We know that we do take on physical characteristics of our mum and dad, but what about musical ones and artistic and creative ones? This is an interesting discussion, and actually all the evidence suggests that the greatest predictor of expertise is the quality and the quantity of the way you work. So as a musician, it's how much work you do, and it's the quality. You can't just go through the motions. It's got to be about quality practice. Now, your listeners may be familiar with that figure for expertise that gets bandied around a fair bit, 10,000 hours. And the reason that figure comes up so often is because expertise researchers such as Dr. Anders Ericsson, who's probably the expert on expertise from Florida State University, they can't find an expert in any endeavour who's done less than that number of hours. And if you explore 10,000 hours, we're talking about 3 hours a day for 10 years every day, or 1.5 hours a day every day for 20 years. So it doesn't come lightly, it doesn't come easily, and not everyone's going to have that motivation or maybe that perseverance. So there's, I call those the soft skills of expertise. If you want to be an expert, there's certain things you need to do, and one is you need to persevere.
Yeah.
In good times and in bad.
And that's where your motivation, your passion comes in, because that's going to keep you going when the going gets tough, as they say.
Yeah. And self-belief.
Yes.
There's some people, some musicians that I know who think that they're good musicians because of the way they were born. And there's others that believe they're good musicians because of their work ethic. And there's a quote from Beethoven. There's a lovely story about Beethoven, if you've got time for me to
sure,
tell you it. And one day he was talking to a student of his in Vienna called Prince Lichnowsky, who he gave piano lessons. And the prince said to him, it's okay for you, Beethoven. You find these things easy because you were born talented. And Beethoven said, hang on, Prince, you are what you are by accident of birth. I am who I am through my own efforts. So Beethoven very clearly had what we now call in psychology a growth mindset. And it's really interesting because there's a woman from Stanford University, Dr. Carol Dweck, and she has found that people with this growth mindset make much more progress than those who believe that they have a fixed mindset, which essentially means that they were born either with it or without that quality to make progress.
So when you have a fixed mindset, essentially you believe that your cup is already full, there is no need to go further, right? Whereas if you have the growth mindset, you continually believe that you can fill more of your cup.
You believe that you can keep getting smarter. And that by learning, by, say, practicing music the right way, by asking more questions about mathematics or whatever your thing is, you will keep getting better. Whereas the fixed mindset thinks, maybe I'm just not musical, I don't have it, so what's the point in trying?
Music teacher and author of Learning Strategies for Musical Success, Michael Griffin, telling us more about becoming experts and how to maximize our learning. For more information, go to musiceducationworld.com. My conversation with Michael continues in just a while on 938 Live. I'm Eugene Low, and A Slice of Life Hour continues here on 938 Live. My chat today with Michael Griffin, involved with music education for more than 25 years in Australia, England and Dubai, and he regularly visits schools in other countries, doing his best to inspire students and staff to learn smarter. And my conversation with Michael continues. So Beethoven has said it, and a lot of luminaries in history have said it. People like Einstein and inventors, and have mentioned this idea of effort and failing again and again and again, but persevering and finally, achieving the sort of success and the skill that they achieve. So effort is crucial, perseverance is crucial.
That's
but
right.
The way you learn is also an instrumental factor, isn't it?
Right.
So, and that is a huge thing that you are involved in as well, that you talk about in your book, which is called Learning Strategies for Musical Success. And of course, those strategies are not simply for musical success. They can be applied for all sorts of learning. So how can you explain to us some of the key themes perhaps that you explore in terms of how you can accelerate or augment your effort, your learning effort?
I can. And as you rightly pointed out, the book is about three aspects if you want to be an expert or if you want to get as good as you can at any endeavour. And one is the amount of work you do. There's got to be a significant quantity of practice. The second one is what we call the soft skills of expertise, those attributes of perseverance, toughing it out when you don't feel like do something, you still do your practice, resisting immediate impulse. And that's where it's difficult for children these days. They get emails, they have Facebook, there's texting, all sorts of things happening. Can we ignore those and get down to the job at hand and focus on what we're doing? And what you've just talked about is the quality of practice. And for mine, in music and indeed in so much of learning, there's three crucial aspects of how to make progress in music. At one, I'll say the three, and then if you like we can talk about them individually. Repetition, slow practice, and chunking. Now, repetition, Aristotle once said we are our repeated selves. We become what we repeat. Excellence, therefore, is a habit, not an act. You become excellent. And what we know about the brain is the brain makes new connections by doing something repeatedly. Once is never enough. None of us could tie our shoelaces up the first time. It takes several attempts. So
I think I've heard, or I've rather read that quote you just mentioned in gyms. That's what they put up there in gyms in those big posters, right? And it's quite similar as well, right?
Yeah,
so like
it is.
When you're building your body, building your mind, it is like building your body. It's people say it's a muscle. It's not really a muscle, but it's similar in that sense.
It is very similar. That's right. And you're right. It's not just about music. It's about Tiger Woods talks about it too. When Tiger Woods has maybe by his standards a poor game of golf, he often says, I need to do more repetitions on my stroke. So repetitions are enormously important. And what we know about young musicians in particular is that they underestimate how many repetitions it takes to secure learning a musical phrase.
So we're talking about learning a musical instrument or playing music in this sense. But of course, what we're talking about today in a larger sense is about learning in general and how that contributes to your fulfillment and development as a human being. So let's go first to, repetition is quite easy to understand, right?
It's easy to understand, but a lot of people don't do enough of it. So it's one of those things that we often stop repeating when we think, I've got it now, I'll move on. But actually, that's when we should do more repetition, because what happens in the brain is the brain circuit that learns gets covered with this chemical called myelin. And myelin makes the learning even more effortless. It makes the transmission of data in the brain quicker, up to 200 times quicker and more accurate. So, and to build myelin, and myelin is the stuff of experts, to build myelin in the brain, we need to do even more repetition.
I'm grinning because, again, this makes me think of exercise, because I've heard it before, and it's been proven, of course, as well, that you can do 30 repetitions every day and still not get better. But it's that, let's say, that 10 extra repetitions that you do, or 10 extra crunches that you do, that are the most crucial at building your muscles, right? So that applies here as well.
It's an interesting analogy, because also when you think about exercise, you do sets, don't you? You might do 3 sets of your bicep muscles or whatever you're working on, and it's the same with music. There's repetition, which we call blocked repetition, which is just doing it all in one go, say 50 repetitions in one hit. But there's a more valuable way to repeat, which is called spaced repetition, which means I might do 10 now, I'll work on something else, and I'll come back and do another 10. So you're actually deliberately making your brain forget. Just like in exercise, you make your body rest. You make your brain forget, so it has to relearn it.
It becomes more difficult. Yeah.
Exactly. This is more difficult learning, but it's better for longer term learning. And it's a paradox that the key to memory is forgetting. It's unusual, isn't it? But that's the paradox of it. So we deliberately forget what we do and we return to it. And the brain says, now, how did you do that again? And it has to go over that neural territory one more time.
Yeah, that's why it learns better. It has to put in that extra effort, right?
So your analogy about the gym is a good one, Eugene. And maybe even the second point, slow practice, is also something you do in the gym. Obviously, you're a bit of a gym junkie, I can tell.
Oh, no. Actually, no. I worked with a trainer once, but I stopped it long ago for reasons I won't reveal.
Gee, you can't tell.
But yes, slow practice, right? I mean, I've heard, of course, that before. In exercise also, you talk about like people running and they build up the acceleration. And afterwards, they come down to a slower velocity, and then they build it up again. So the slow practice actually helps in building up the muscles as well. Instead of just like accelerating all the way and keeping the velocity constant.
There's something very special about slow learning, and what we do know is that the brain loves slow learning because it takes time to put these neural circuits of action, neural circuits of learning together.
Music teacher and author of Learning Strategies for Musical Success, Michael Griffin, speaking with me, Eugene Loh, on A Slice of Life Hour. And my chat with Michael continues here on 938 Live in just over half an hour after headline news. I'm Eugene Loh on A Slice of Life Hour on 938 Live, today chatting with Michael Griffin, a music teacher involved with music education for more than 25 years in Australia, England and Dubai, and regularly visits schools in other countries to inspire students and staff to learn smarter. He has also got a new book out called Learning Strategies for Musical Success. And earlier, Michael was sharing about the concept of slow practice or slow learning, and he elaborates more on this.
The young piano student, learning a new piece of music will often try and play it up to speed that the piece of music goes, that they've heard it. But that's not the best way to learn it. That's the eventual speed that we want to play the piece of music. But to learn it, we really have to pull back the tempo, the speed of the music. Not only does that minimise all the mistakes that we might be practising, but our brain makes new learning much easier and much better and much more reliably from slow practice.
It also creates the links, right? When you expand it, you begin to see the links between the various notes. That's how you move from one to the other.
And it's not just music. I mean, you look at the way a gymnast learns his or her moves. They have a body handler that moves them slowly into this position and that position so they can feel physically what it's like. Swimmers practice their stroke slowly. Golfers practice their swing slowly, so they can really feel it and give their body and their brain an opportunity to feel what the body has to do. And it's just like that with music. There's something magical about slow practice that most children don't get it. All the kids want to play too fast. So
even adults don't get it.
Exactly, even adults don't get it.
We're all in a rush, right? We want to save time. We want to do everything now.
But really, it's a terrific way to learn, and I'd encourage people learning a musical instrument to really practice slowly, because that's what the professionals do. and give it a go. There's an old saying, isn't there, that if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. So if you want to try for better outcomes, try something different. And if you haven't tried the slow practice route, give it a shot.
Yeah, insanity is doing the same thing day in and day out and expecting a different outcome, right?
Exactly. Now, we've mentioned repetition, we've mentioned slow practice, and the third point we made about your question about what actual ways are there to improve your practice and get better is what I call chunking. Now, chunking's an unusual term, but basically it means don't work on too much at any one time. And again, it's based on what we know about the brain. You know, our long-term memory can store so much data. It could be infinite, or it could be, as the Scientific American Journal once said, 4 terabytes. It's a heck of a lot, whatever it is. However, our short-term memory can store only between 5 and 9 bits of information. It's incredibly minimal, isn't it, for the power of our brain? Which is why, for example, if people look at their credit card, they'll see that the 16 digits are grouped in chunks of 4, because banks know that we can't remember much more than that. And that's the limitation of the human brain. So that transfers to learning. Rather than learn a whole piece of music at any one time, we should really just work on a few measures, on a couple of phrases, maybe the first part of the music. And when we've got that under control, then we'll work on the second part. Whereas, you know, what most children do is they play through a piece of music, the whole piece of music, once without stopping to fix anything up. And so what chunking invites us to do is just work on little bits at a time.
All right. Now, Michael, as a consummate musician yourself, obviously you've had extensive experience in the area of how music affects learning as well. So we've heard a lot about this. Obviously, it's not just learning how music can help in healing and how it stimulates and influences brain activity and all that. So tell us about what you've learned over the years with regards to music and pedagogy and the learning process. Well, the first thing that you were saying about the effects of music, you also mentioned Einstein earlier on. Now, Einstein's a great example. He's arguably the greatest physicist or scientist that the world has known. Yet some people may not be aware that he was intensely interested in music, both for its own sake, but also for the impact it had on his creative strategies. And his wife Elsa, tells stories that when Einstein struggled with a theory of physics, he would often put his pen down and take up the violin or play the piano. He played both quite well, by the way. He was a good amateur musician. And he'd get an aha moment. And I think that Einstein intuitively understood that music is a very whole brain. It activates the whole brain probably more than anything else we know. And that whole brain activation allowed him to get better intellectual outcomes with his work. And we see that, as you said, we've seen that across many fields. And Pythagoras, the great early mathematician, he was also into music in a big time as well. The other thing we know about music, and this is one of the powers of music that we're just learning more and more about, is it really creates bonds and it builds community. Only quite recently, scientists discovered that when people sing together, there's a neuro drug release called oxytocin in the brain. And oxytocin is sometimes called the love drug because it makes people feel close together. You can also get oxytocin by hugging one another and by massage and other physical type activities which schools don't engage in or shouldn't engage in. And what's wonderful is that people feel very close when they sing together. So if we want to build up community... You're not talking about karaoke sessions where they sing different pieces of music. You're talking about singing the same song, like in the choir.
Singing together, that's it.
Okay.
We've found through research...
a cappella is a good example.
A cappella is wonderful. But heartbeats start to beat in sync when people sing the same song. And the brain releases this, as I said, oxytocin, which makes people feel that they trust and they like one another. So people leave choirs smiling and happier than they were before the session. it's a great community builder.
Oh, that's why Christmas caroling makes people happy as well, I suppose, right? Yeah,
yes.
It's fascinating. Obviously, you've had extensive experience, years of experience. You're a musician yourself. You play the piano and you record music as well, playing classical pieces. And I'm going to ask you if you were to recommend perhaps a piece or two of pieces of music that would augment or enhance learning, or even just to get a person to a state where he's able to receive maybe, a stimuli that he would like to absorb better, or be in a more serene state of mind. Would you have any suggestions?
Well, that's a good question. And the thing about music is different music can be used for so many purposes. For example, swimmers these days, you might notice if you watch the Olympic Games, if you saw the London or the Beijing Olympic Games, that walking up to the blocks, so many swimmers had earbuds. They were listening to music before the race. And what we know is some were listening to slow, calming, relaxing music to settle their nerves, and others, like Michael Phelps, the champion American swimmer, he was listening to hip-hop to gee himself up, because it put fire in his belly, and he felt it made him swim better. So there's music's a bit like courses for courses. It depends what the outcome you want. Certainly for maybe helping you focus on schoolwork or study, the best music seems to be music that is rather slow, not too slow because you don't want it to put you to sleep, but not too fast either. Because you could define fast music as your brain has to process more events per second than slow music. So you don't want anything too fast because it's taxing on what your brain has to do. Fairly slow. We also want music that's quite happy in nature. It makes us feel good about ourselves. So in technical jargon, we'd call that music in a major key as opposed to a minor key. And we'd want music that is quite thin in texture. And what texture means is the amount of instruments playing at any one time. So if we have, say, a large symphony orchestra playing a piece of Beethoven or Mozart, that's a rich texture that we have to deal with. And if we're trying to maybe relax and calm down and focus, we might be better with a thinner texture, which could be an acoustic guitar or a piano or a violin or a cello.
And that was Michael Griffin, music teacher and author of Learning Strategies for Musical Success, chatting with me, Eugene Low, on A Slice of Life Hour. More information on Michael at musiceducationworld.com. Coming up in a few minutes, the meaningful media segment of the show. I'm Eugene Low on A Slice of Life Hour on 938 Live, and this is the meaningful media part of the show. And coming up, I'll have a music recommendation from music teacher Michael Griffin, shares a piece of music that is particularly conducive for learning. But now let's go to my A Slice of Life Facebook page and read out some of your comments from there. First of all, Ng Itat, thank you once again for posting this. And Itat, you write, thank you for reading my comment, Eugene. Writing helps me to look at my life from a third person's perspective. I see life always begins as a messed up Rubik's Cube. As we grow up and mature, we find and learn people's ways to solve their cubes. Yet we are only most satisfied when we finally solve our own cube using our own solution which we develop. What fascinates us may not be interesting forever. What we imagine by ourselves will always motivate us forever and ever. Thank you very much for posting that, Ng Itat. Also on my script on comparing, or rather not comparing ourselves with others, SC Fong has this to say: deep down, what is that inner inclination that causes us to compare ourselves with others, to cause us to envy others? Food for thought. And here are some responses to my script on desire. Firstly, Ruben Chiang posted this: I'm rich, not because I have more, but because I need less. Lisa Chu also weighs in on this, saying, Eugene, hi, thanks for your regular write-ups and hope you're doing fine. Just reading through this, so true in an economic sense of opportunity costs. Whilst we desire, one must never lose ourselves. Instead, learn to love ourselves more at the expense of our health, which is the greatest wealth. And Sriram Managa writes, we must live for our family, happily with what we have, rather than comparing and busy desiring others' achievements. Sharon Sandhu has also written in saying, life is about balance, I suppose. The issue is how to find that balance. Thank you Ruben Chiang, Lisa Chu, Sriram Managa and Sharon Sandhu for writing in response to my script on desire. I also posted something recently on a Slice of Life page on Facebook, and this is how it goes. We cry and still cause sadness. We miss someone and neglect another. We condemn others and never judge ourselves. And in response to this, Paul LCS has written in and said, sadly, people are self-righteous when they judge others more than they judge themselves. These people do not look in the mirror every time they speak or do their own things. Finger pointing always has a side effect. Thank you so much for all your comments and posts in reaction to my scripts. Do keep them coming in to my Facebook page. Search A Slice of Life under Pages. And now let's hear from Michael Griffin, who has been involved with music education for more than 25 years in Australia, England and Dubai, and regularly visits schools in other countries, doing his best to inspire students and staff to learn smarter. He is also the author of the book Learning Strategies for Musical Success, and I asked him to suggest a piece of music that is particularly conducive for learning.
This piece of music is by the German composer Johann Sebastian Bach, and it's one of his preludes. He wrote 24 preludes and 24 fugues, and this is a prelude in C-sharp major. It's quite a fast piece of music, but there's a real spiritual quality about Bach's music, and I think your listeners would find the more that they listen to Bach, the more they get out of it. This is one of the things about art music and classical music in particular. Sometimes it takes numerous listens to appreciate it. It's probably a bit like Shakespeare. Most people take a while to understand Shakespeare, and it yields its magic and its beauty after you devote that time. And I think this music's a bit similar. So it's quite a bristling, shimmering piece of music. In fact, my new CD is going to be called Shimmering. So it's pieces of this nature which glitter and shine.
And that was pianist and music teacher Michael Griffin, his rendition of Bach's Prelude in C sharp, which will be included in a forthcoming CD. If you have something to share on my show, be it a reflection, an original idea, a reaction to my posts on Facebook, or any other suggestion for a song, a book, a phrase, a quote, or whatever, do email me at eugene@mediacorp.com.sg. Really looking forward to hearing from you. I'm Eugene Low, and thank you so much for spending a Slice of Life hour with me.